COVID-19 has left an indelible mark on all sectors including agriculture, the backbone of the African economy. For the sake of millions of households supported by small-scale farmers, mitigating measures must be rolled out. AATF therefore invites you to an interactive webinar themed Promotion of Agricultural Technologies and Innovations for Agribusiness Resilience in Africa in the Wake of COVID-19. Moderated by Dr. Denis Kyetere, speakers include Professor Hamadi Boga, Dr. Martin Fregene, Dr. Emmanuel Okobenin, Mr. Justin Rakotoarisaona, Professor Mohammed Khalid, Professor Ruth Oniang'o, and Mr. Stephen Mushiri. Join our panel of experts on 27th July 2020 at 1400 East Africa Time. For more information, visit aatf-africa.org.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good evening, viewers from all over the world watching this show today, this afternoon. Welcome. My name is Nancy Mushiri. Welcome to this webinar, which is the first in a series of various webinars that will be held and run by AATF for the remainder of this year, 2020. This and the other webinars to follow are structured to cover areas of interest that are specific to agricultural transformation for Africa. These conversations will revolve around the smallholder farmer and especially their access to innovative technologies that matter to them and that make a difference to their lives. Today's discussion will focus on the critical aspect of commercialization of technologies. We will be paying special attention to the current COVID-19 situation and the relationship that has with agribusiness specifically. We have speakers and panelists that will make this conversation exciting for us all, but more importantly, that will share information that will be useful and helpful to us all, and maybe help us find a way of finding how we can actually make a difference to this situation. Our moderator for this session is Dr. Denis Kyetere, the Executive Director of AATF, who I will be inviting shortly, and who is an agriculturalist with many years behind him. Welcome, Dr. Kyetere.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Welcome, dear friends, colleagues, stakeholders, wherever you're joining us from. In my native tongue, we say, Mwebare. As you have been informed, I'm Denis T, the Executive Director of AATF, the African Agriculture Technology Foundation, and I will be your moderator in today's discussion. I am happy and honored to welcome you all to this AATF webinar, where we will be dialogue on agribusiness resilience during this uncertain time when the world is struggling with the COVID-19 pandemic. In this session, we are joined by some of the greatest minds in the agriculture sector on the continent, who are here to share their thoughts on how we can ensure stability and growth in agribusiness in the region, given the current challenge. Before I introduce them, let us have a quick reminder of the issues to discuss today. In the last 15 years, AATF has dedicated itself to empowering the smallholder farmers in Africa with a wide choice of agriculture innovations and strategies to transition into agribusinesses. Although these efforts have helped to improve the incomes and the health of farmers, their families, and communities, agribusinesses in Africa remain vulnerable to some threats, such as pests, diseases, and climate change. The recent emergence of COVID-19 pandemic has further threatened agribusiness survival and farmers' income. In today's webinar, we will discuss the need to promote appropriate agriculture technologies and innovations that will help agribusinesses in Africa to be resilient in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. I will go ahead and introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Professor Hamadi Boga, who is the Principal Secretary, State Department of Agricultural Research, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries, and Irrigation in Kenya. He is the former founding principal of Taita Taveta University and was its Vice Chancellor between 2007 and 2017. He was also a professor in the Department of Botany at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology in Kenya. We welcome you, Professor Boga.
Thank you very much, Denis. I'm happy to be here to share our experiences around agriculture and COVID.
Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Dr. Martin Fregene, who is a geneticist and agricultural policy expert. He's currently the Director of Agriculture and Agro-Industry at the African Development Bank, working on implementing the Feed Africa strategy that leads the execution of technologies for African agriculture transformation, TAT. And welcome, Dr. Fregene.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kyetere. Pleasure to be here with you today. And we look forward to an exciting discussion of how to make agribusiness in Africa more resilient in the face of COVID-19.
Thank you. Incidentally, Dr. Martin Fregene will have to step away in the course of the discussions, but will be ably represented by Dr. Damien Ihendioha. Our next presenter is Dr. Emmanuel Okobenin, a world-trained scientist in plant breeding, genetics, and genomics with a focus on cassava, and is currently the Director of Product Development and Commercialization at AATF. In this role, Emmanuel identifies opportunities for agricultural technology interventions, assesses the feasibility and the probability of success, identifies and sources of appropriate technologies, negotiates the access and development and deployment, and provides overall leadership in the implementation of AATF's project portfolio. Welcome, Dr. Okobenin.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Mr. Justin Rakotoarisaona. Mr. Justin Rakotoarisaona is the Secretary General of African Seed Trade Association, AfDB. He formerly was the seed production manager in the Madagascar Ministry of Agriculture, responsible for seed producers associations and seed multiplication centers for production and marketing of high quality seeds. We welcome you, Justin. Yeah. Our other panelists include Professor Khalid Othman, who is the Executive Director, National Agriculture Extension Research and Liaison Services at Zaria, Nigeria. Professor Mohammed is also an Associate Professor of Agricultural Engineering of Ahmad Bello University, Zaria, where he teaches and supervises undergraduate and postgraduate students. We welcome you, Professor Mohammed. Incidentally, he will be joining in later. Our next panelist is the Honorable Professor Ruth Oniang'o, who is the founder of Rural Outreach Program Africa, a former member of parliament in the government of Kenya. Professor Oniang'o also wears different hats and is a recipient of various awards, including the African Food Prize in 2017, where she was honored for her relentless efforts to feed the continent at grassroots levels. She is the editor-in-chief of the African Journal of Food, Agriculture, Nutrition, and Development. We welcome you, Professor Oniang'o.
Thank you for having me on board. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Last but not least, we have Mr. Stephen Mushiri, who is the CEO of East African Farmers Federation, EAFF, a regional network of national farmer unions, federations, and cooperatives in 10 countries. He has been working in the agriculture sector for 17 years and is driving EAFF's 2013-2020 strategic plan, whose focus is entrepreneurship. We welcome you, Stephen.
Thank you, Doc, and I appreciate the invite.
You're welcome. Now that we have our speakers on board, I would like to highlight some rules of engagement for the webinar. We will have two 15-minute presentations by the African Development Bank and AATF to introduce the subject matter. The panelist session will follow, and thereafter we will take questions from you, the audience. You are all encouraged to kindly post your questions on the chat box, and we will collect them for response by the panelists. Comments too are also welcome. Now, one thing that is of importance is time management. May I request we stick to the allocated time so that we are able to deliver the messages in time we have. Thank you very much. Okay, now we go to the presenters or presentations. May I now invite Dr. Martin Fregene to speak to us on transforming Africa's agriculture through fast-tracking commercialization of innovative agricultural technologies to enhance resilience. We welcome you, Martin. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Denis. And as I said before, it's a pleasure to be with you all again today. I'll be talking about the African Development Bank's response to the COVID-19 impact on food and nutrition security. Next slide, please. And as part of this discussion, I will also describe the African Development Bank investments in bridging the gap between new agricultural technologies and the millions of farmers whose livelihoods depend upon agriculture. As we all know, before COVID-19, you had more than 65 million Africans in Sahelian West Africa and also in the Horn of Africa who are already food insecure. So before COVID-19 even came, we already had a big problem with supply of food. But with COVID-19, now what we have seen is that there has been a reduction in demand. There has been a aversion in the behavior of consumers, with respect to emphasis on more longer shelf life food and emphasis on less of vegetables just because they're not available. And also the disruption also in movement and lockdowns created also a supply side problem, just a reduction in food supply and also a reduction in a food production. Next slide, please. These have all led to disruptions in access to food by the most vulnerable. But the African Development Bank had dealt with similar problems in the past. In 2008, we had a food crisis globally where the price of food, literally doubled in many areas. And what we had done then was we've come up with a program to reduce vulnerability and the short supply in food. So we actually had a premise upon which to respond to COVID-19. Next slide, please. So some of the lessons we learned then was that you needed to build, a demand-driven approach. It was important to enhance coordination and support, between, all the different actors to ensure that food supply, was increased and also demand either through support to vulnerable populations or through support to governments, was in place, especially things like introduction of new technologies to raise food production was key. Next slide, please. So immediately the COVID-19 struck, the African Development Bank responded with a $10 billion facility that was to support countries, not just with food, but also with health facilities and health medical supplies. It will also support countries, with budget support to ensure that they had liquidity to be able to, address, the needs to pay salaries, and the needs also to import the most important medical supplies. Part of the COVID-19 rapid response facility was also agriculture. Next slide, please. And for agriculture, we had 3 different work streams. We had the immediates, and we had to respond immediately to the situation in many countries. And then we had the more short term, 6 to 12 months, and then we had the more medium term. Next slide, please. On the immediate response, the first one was to ensure that food could even get to the urban areas where food is consumed. So we had to work with governments to create a grain channel that is allow the free flow of not just food, but also seeds and fertilizers and pesticides and things like that. The second one was also the provision of emergency food relief for the vulnerable populations, especially the very poor, the urban poor, and also ensure that there was labor to continue to till the fields. Yep. Next slide, please. On the short term, we had to scale up access to improved varieties and certified of improved varieties, that's fertilizer and other planting materials for farmers to be able to go back to field. We also had to, support government programs, to stock, to build up food reserves, and at the same time ensure that food was available to populations from existing food reserves. One of the most important things also was to upgrade sanitation and coordinate practices, best safe practices, both in the marketplace and also for production. Next slide, please. For the more long term, we thought about how do we support the SMEs. SMEs produce 60% of the food eaten in Africa. And one of the things was through trade guarantees, first loss guarantees, provide improved access for the SMEs to finance. Another thing was also to develop policies, that could rapidly scale up food production, especially high yielding, early maturing, drought tolerant, disease resistance, pest resistance, crop and livestock and fish. Next slide, please. This is a summary of the priority intervention areas. I have mentioned, the immediate, the short, and the medium term, but they were all organized along these areas: food distribution, establishment of food prices, farm inputs, growth and enhancement and resilience support, and food processing. Next slide, please. Others include advisory, on safety and production, policy support, particularly the green channels for free flow of food and distribution, and also setting up operations. Food Security Task Force. This was an initiative of the AU and the FAO to ensure that there was a task force in the government, comprised of the government and the private sector, to ensure that nobody was left behind with respect to food supply. Next slide, please. This is just a summary. The bank has a Feed Africa portfolio of about $4.5 billion. So we restructured that portfolio, and we took about a little bit less than 10% of that portfolio to be able to address the immediate needs. As I said before, food supply to the vulnerable, inputs, and providing good health and the like. Next slide, please. I have mentioned before that the beneficiaries were the most vulnerable groups, the elderly, the children, the poor, rural populations, already affected by drought and low-cost inventions, smallholder farmers and cooperatives. Next slide, please. But this is where I would actually emphasize for the rest of my talk. The bank already knew that Africa was food insecure, not even before COVID-19. So the bank had launched what we call Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation. If you look carefully all around, for example, in Southern Africa, only 20% of farmers in Southern Africa have access to the new drought-tolerant maize varieties that have been developed in the last 15 years by institutions such as AATF, CIMIT, and others. There has always been a huge gap between what is available and what farmers are using on the field. Many of those things, many of those factors that prevented farmers from accessing this new varieties were just the lack of the public extension, because the public extension was what in the past and in other countries, exposed farmers to these new varieties and also helped to bulk up, very importantly, bulk up the seeds of the new varieties to be able to give it to farmers. But that has not been happening. So the bank stepped in to kind of remove that risk for seed companies by providing the seed companies with initial materials to bulk up, and also providing them both in and post-season production of certified seeds. We have two major projects. We have what we call TAT for the Savannas, where we look at the commodities of maize, soybean, and poultry. They all together, because maize and soybean constitute poultry feed. I'm working in Ghana and Gabon, Guinea, also Zambia. We have been able to, begin production of both maize and soybean for the poultry industry. Africa imports a lot of poultry, on a yearly basis. Next slide, please. But then we also have the bigger TATs, and TATs, like I said before, is a platform for technology and capacity transfer of the most recent, in the most advanced, new technologies of heat-tolerant wheat varieties, of maize, drought-tolerant maize varieties, of hybrids, sorghum, and as you see on the picture on the right, and also of them improved rice, high iron beans, orange flesh, sweet potatoes. This was to ensure that the African farmer could increase his productivity. The African farmer could have access to a diverse basket of high nutrition food, and also the African farmer could have, defensives against pests such as the fall armyworm, and also can make the best use of water available. So we had a soil fertility and also water development enabler compact. Next slide, please. This is some of the achievements. This is not everything. For example, in wheat, working through the leader of the wheat compact, Kyetere, we have produced more than 64,000 tons of certified seeds. These are heat-tolerant materials that can raise productivity from as low as 3 tons all the way to 6 tons, and this has been distributed to farmers in Sudan. More than 300,000 hectares have been covered by these new heat-tolerant materials. In Ethiopia, about 250,000 hectares have also been covered. In Sudan and Nigeria, and in Nigeria, we have been able to export some seeds from Sudan to begin the process also of expansion of the area covered to the heat-tolerant varieties. It's good to mention that these varieties have been there for the last 5 years, but there was just the seed companies and the public extension just did not have the capacity to bulk the seeds to make them available to farmers. That's where the bank stepped in. Also, we have climate smart maize, where there has been a 30% yield gain, and this has been led by AATF, and AATF has done an excellent job, so far. We have been able to produce 17,000 tons of climate smart seeds for distribution to farmers.
You have 3 minutes left, Martin.
Okay, thank you. Almost done, and almost 700,000 hectares have been cultivated. This, is a difference between farming and being able to feed for many farming families in Southern Africa, and also Eastern Africa, especially the Horn of Africa. Also, TAT has worked with the government to create an enabling policy so that seeds are widely available. Next slide, please. Well, these are just some numbers and some KPIs on how the COVID-19 response by the bank is to be assessed. I wouldn't go into them because you have the presentation and you can always look at them later on. Next slide, please. Yeah, just mention that this is a collaborative work with the African Union FAO leading the way, and also the other regional bodies, COMESA, ECOWAS, and SADC, and many other people providing very much important needed support. Next slide. Yeah, as I said before, we had worked with our Caribbean member countries. We did an assessment of the current food situation in each country, and based upon that, these interventions were, were rolled out. Next slide, please. Well, these are the current countries' situation analysis. I wouldn't go into much of them, but what we found out was that many of them, actually had a big gap in food reserves, strategic food reserves, and also agrochemicals, and that is where the bank especially intervened, most. Next slide. This is one of the last slides. Partnerships, in getting this done, not only for the technologies, but for even the interventions on food supply, on buildings and strategic reserves is key. You just have to be able to work with the private sector, work with them, all the multilateral development partners. Next slide. And of course, there was an M&E framework to be able to report on what was done. Next slide. In conclusion, yeah, the bank's response to the COVID-19 in the immediate was to build, was to deploy food to vulnerable populations. In the intermediate and the medium, in the more medium and long term, was to make sure that farmers have the technologies that they need most to be able to raise their productivity. And next slide. I'd like to thank you for your patience and also for listening to me. And I wish you all a pleasant rest of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that informative presentation, Dr. Fregene. And since we will be stepping out a bit, you have given us a lot of information, but just could you elaborate a little bit more on how COVID-19 has affected the bank's vision of transforming agriculture in general?
Like we all know, one of the biggest impacts of COVID-19 has been on food supply. There was a lockdown in many countries immediately after COVID-19, struck, and we know that many countries, began that sort of rely upon imported food, could no longer access imported food. The immediate response in many of these countries was on an increase in prices. For example, there was a 30% increase in rice, the price of rice in many countries. There was also lack of access to improved high nutrition food like vegetables and fruits and things like that. So the first thing the bank did, the very first thing the bank did, was to work with governments to ensure there was a free flow of this food. And the second thing that the bank did was work with government, provide governments funding to be able to identify vulnerable populations and ensure that they are provided food. And this was money that was going through the government. So so government was giving budget support to procure food and also to distribute to the vulnerable. The next thing was to make sure that there was access to inputs. Very important, access to inputs. So we had what I call the farm inputs resilience enhancement support group in 23 countries, where we work with governments either using digital platforms, ICT platforms, or without digital platforms. We work with government to ensure that farmers are given a subsidy, very important subsidy, for them to be able to acquire seeds and fertilizer and be able to go back to farming. But like I said before, also making sure that improves technologies such as heat tolerant and drought tolerant, heat tolerant wheat and drought tolerant maize were part of the package you've been giving to farmers. This was one of the ways that the bank responded. But like I said earlier, the response is still ongoing. We're working with the SMEs who, as you all know, provide most of the food that we eat in Africa. The SMEs are extremely important sector in agriculture on the continent. So we're trying to improve access to finance, helping governments to be able to ensure that SMEs can get the finance they need, and also to help them with some of the infrastructure, wholesale markets, and some of the roads that these SMEs have to move their products over.
Thank you very much, Martin. And we take note of the priority intervention areas and the strategies, also on the achievements of the TAT program. Thank you. Our next presenter is Dr. Emmanuel Okobenin. And Emmanuel, over to you. We'll be presenting on, we'll be taking us through AATF's presentation on the strategies for enhanced agribusiness resilience in the wake of COVID-19, the AATF experience. Over to you, Emmanuel.
Thank you, Denis, for the introduction. And I would like to join AATF and my colleagues to welcome those who are joining us for this webinar. And it's my pleasure to present this important, to make this important presentation. Is dealing on strategies for enhancing agribusiness resilience in the wake of COVID-19. And basically, it will also relate to the first speaker in the sense that we are trying to address a number of things and ensure that food and nutrition are provided to Africans. And also, we want people to take note of two key things in this title: the strategies and agribusiness. Of course, COVID-19 is the third component, which is a global pandemic. Anyway, so just to let you know that agribusiness don't just happen by chance. It involves a lot of work, and that is what AATF is devoted to doing to change the agricultural landscape in Africa. And so I will be speaking to 4 item lines, giving you a brief introduction, agribusiness strategies, which is the fulcrum of today's presentation, and what is AATF doing, and then a conclusion at the end. Just to let you know that we are talking about agribusiness, and that's because we have experience doing this for some years going, and because we believe that the trust we need to advance agriculture in Africa lies with agribusiness. Largely, the continent thrives on agriculture, so it's largely a farming continent, and agriculture is driven by the smallholder farmers, where you have low input and it's basically based on subsistence farming. However, a lot of developments have happened in Africa. We must recognize that, and we take that as a positive. However, we still are having difficulties in trying to meet the needs and expectations of the people in Africa, especially the smallholder farmer who tills the land. And agribusiness also is gaining some good traction, but we are still miles away from what we want to see. And basically, unique challenges are there in terms of product quality, low shelf, and that is not consistent with agribusiness. Poor infrastructure, you don't have storage facilities, means you are losing money. You cannot work outside nature, so that's a problem. And post-harvest losses are there because we haven't got the right approach to solving that. And then agricultural finance and insurance are always there. Very important, very important. But having insurance and finance doesn't speak to all that you need to do. And just to say you need funds to do a lot of things, but you need to know what you need that funds for. And that is where the strategies are coming up on. And AATF has really worked around that area. And then, of course, we talk of shocks and vulnerabilities. Economic shocks are there. They won't go away. We have climatic issues, which brings the abiotic components much stronger. They won't go unless we try to change things. And most of the climatic problems we have are not even from within Africa. They are coming from elsewhere in the world, where a number of things are happening to change the climate. But Africa has to pay for that price anyway. Political challenges are there because policies are put in place. A lot of things are put in place, and the government comes, that changes. The demographic issues are always there. So those issues really affect agribusiness, but we must feed the people. And that is the facts there. And with those challenges, again, the COVID-19 is here to stay, because we've not had that this is something that will go away very soon. And even if it goes away, we can still face more pandemics. And we just must understand that we just have to evolve to be able to contend and deal with pandemics and still feed the people. So a lot of things are disrupted, and it's not just in the agricultural sector alone, but because food is very important and everybody eats food, then it's very essential and so very important that we address those issues. So we've heard about the markets are not really functioning, supplies are bad, labor shortages because of social distancing, inputs will not be available, border restrictions are still there. And so the food production chain is completely disrupted. But again, why are we so focused on agribusiness and agriculture? And it's just because agriculture in Africa goes well beyond food. It goes well beyond food. And so most African countries depend on agriculture to employ people. You can see the numbers, the green, up to 70% and more in the dark green shades. And that tells you that it's very important on the continent. And if it's so important, it means therefore that your growth and development in Africa is highly driven by agriculture. And if you place COVID-19 on that, then that makes it a very difficult task to deal with. So agribusiness, basically based on the role agriculture plays in Africa, is the shortest economic pathway for Africa right now, especially when you look at Agenda 2063. And even if you were to meet the SDGs, you will still need to really advance agriculture on the continent. So if we are to do that, what is the best way? We've spoken about money. There have been a lot of government interventions in the past. Sometimes farmers get money at ridiculous interest rates. Sometimes they don't get the money. And a number of things happen. You have the banks, non-bank financial institutions are there. But at the end, what do they do with that money? Because sometimes they don't get the commensurate response they want. And everything is blamed on technologies, and they can't really explain why that is not happening. But AATF has worked around this subject for a while, and we now know that the way things have been done in Africa doesn't just offer the best approach to building agricultural transformation. And we also need to understand that even in cases where some of the things farmers require are available, it doesn't get to them. And so your money will not solve your needs without strategizing and putting innovation platforms in place. And that's what we've done. So the strategies I shall be speaking with are things AATF has tested, and I will be addressing that. So in addition to that, a great fraction of Africa's demography are not really captured. And you see a lot of youths are not interested, and women, let's say we accept it that they are about 50%, they are not fully integrated or empowered. And therefore, that huge human force is neglected, and that comes at a big cost to Africa. But whatever strategy you use, it has to be systemic and integrated. So if it is not integrated, you will not get the synergies you need and good response. So all the points I've listed here, agri-input subsidy, component systems, deployment of resilient products, mechanization, none of them will run alone. And you need to put them together. You arrange all that into a system and in an integrated manner that will give you the results you desire. So in the face of COVID-19, we just have to admit that we must be able to assist the farmers, get some smart agro-input subsidy programs that will not distort the markets. We must remember that subsidies will not always be there. And so we must be able to build a strong entrepreneurship around the farmers to be able to thrive in business when the government is not able to provide funds. But we have a difficult situation right now that means that a lot of entrepreneurs have been affected, including smallholder farmers, and some small subsidy will be essential to addressing that. We've seen some innovative approaches that have used e-voucher system. It's worked in Malawi, and I know it's worked in Nigeria because Dr. Fregene also was part of his program in Nigeria where e-voucher had been used for inputs, and it did work. So we should learn to embrace things that work in Africa, in countries, and then see how to learn from them. And also, we talk about technologies and inputs as well. Fregene also just spoke about the work in TAT. Climate smart seeds are very important in addressing some of the challenges. The changes in climate is also working on smallholder farmers in Africa. And given the vast agroecologies we have in Africa, we just must have the right technology for the right agroecology. And then see how to build in machinery into processes. We'll talk about that in another slide, and which is this. So agricultural mechanization helps you to maximize your technologies very well. There's no need for you to grow a small land and use bad technology.
4 minutes left, Emmanuel.
So mechanization is very key. So what I'm trying to say here is that mechanization can be applied in post-harvest, it can be applied in processing, it can be applied in production, and it can also help you with sales as you try to get your food to the markets. Another one is to build in policy. Try and see how you can put in good regulation for input and output markets, and then also implement green corridors. For example, Africa is so divided that you couldn't get things from one country to another, including inputs. And so that does not really help. But when you put in green corridors, you are fast-tracking the movement of inputs and products across nations, taking synergies of the comparative advantage any country has. And of course, with COVID-19, the government needs to quickly try to bring down the infection levels in Africa so that the business environment can get more confidence to continue business in the agricultural sector. But one of the key things that has been missed in Africa is that we develop technologies, but the technologies do not get to the farmers in the right product level you want them to be. So some of them do face a lot of distortions, no quality, like I mentioned in the introductory sites. That is a very key word because you need to hand over technologies to farmer in the right way that they can use it in a responsible manner. So stewardship is very key. That's a whole big subject on its own, and it's very important to ensure that farmers do have confidence in the technologies you give to them. And then transforming the market systems. You will see on the left, these are the kind of things we have. Basically, it has no rules, and farmers cannot even negotiate what they want. And so you don't get good prices there. But when you move into structured market systems, like you have on the right, a lot of things are put in place. If infrastructure gets in there, what you lose is not that much because you already put infrastructure to eliminate poor quality things and also ensure that post-harvest losses are minimized. And it comes with branding. It gives you competitive prices. You do packaging, you do processing. Young industrialization takes off, and that strengthens the growth of your economy. And then you minimize losses. So those are the kind of things we want to do in agriculture. And then the seed systems and seed supply is basically informal in Africa. So you give room for professional things to happen, and farmers just cannot cope with that, and therefore they reuse their seeds. If farmers can get good quality seeds, they will go to where they can get it and buy and reuse it. And you know your productivity is dependent on seeds, which is also dependent on what the genetics sets for productivity. So this is very important, but a lot of things are needed. Then, like now that we have COVID-19, farmers cannot just, now social distancing is the way to go. But this is an opportunity that offers solutions to many problems, issues on productivity, markets, extension, financing. A lot of things can be done through this project. And I think it speaks more to COVID-19, even though the opportunity was often great without COVID-19. Right now, things will change. Right now, we are doing a conference now through webinar, but that will stay after COVID-19 because once people find it as effective, then they will go to it. Then the other thing, which was also spoken to earlier by my speaker, was the issue of partnerships. Public-private partnership is what AATF takes seriously, and it has demonstrated that all through its a business chain to ensure that we build synergies, work together, agree together, make decisions together, create innovation platforms. So you can see there are many players there, even more than what I have put here. So if you have to do that, it means that you need to know who you have to work with. So partnership is important. So these are things that are very important, and we have demonstrated it in the work we do at AATF. AATF is operating in 23 countries at the moment, and we have several products that have come out from that public-private partnership. And they speak to several technologies. One of them is on weed control related to striga, maize drought, which the last speaker spoke about, insect protection, high productivity, and other kinds of stress tolerance. So they are very important, and these are very strategic technologies that we have deployed to address some gaps in the value chain in the agricultural sector. But I want to tell you, like I said before, agribusiness does not happen by chance. You have to bring it in the process of your work. We're talking of technology access and licensing. We need to see whether there's a component that meets the needs of the users we are working for, and whether it has any business opportunities. And because we're working for business, we subject it to rigorous processes, including testing with users, our stakeholders we work with, and then work together to build up a pipeline for deployment and commercialization processes, and then speaking to stewardship, which I had earlier mentioned in one slide. And we use different agribusiness models. One of them is a mechanization, where we have demonstrated that you gain a lot. The power is immense, and you can't really quantify it if you maximize the potential it offers. Because with more, it gives you more traction in the land area you can cultivate within a short time, and your unit cost of production is low, and you can really be competitive in the market because you can be very flexible with prices, because you gain more. You gain more power with the technology. And we've used all kinds of things in this. We've used what we call revolving fund to help farmers. We've also clustered them to take advantage of the technology. A lot of things, we did under this project, and we've been able to make very strong gains in mechanization. The cost is much lower compared to manual labor that is declining right now. Then we've also moved further to strengthen that aspect by creating a social enterprise called AgriDrive. And it's working in 3 countries with a lot of patronage by those we have worked with. And we have had to create this to be able to meet demands for mechanization in Nigeria. And also another enterprise was done also, which is QBS. QBS, we have issues with seeds. We are not able to have good foundation seeds that are needed to create certified seeds. And so AATF have worked with investors to be able to address this big gap that is denying many farmers of having access to quality seeds. And then, of course, under the TAT, we've worked with AfDB in terms of developing seed policies for good seeds, accreditation of inputs, and building regional harmonization, as well as market policies that will serve as an incentive to farmers who we want them to produce more. And then this is one of the key areas where we have made great impacts for all the technologies. We've reached over 3 million farmers with novel technologies that are helping them to address some of the climatic challenges we have, as well as other productivity issues. And, this is WEMA. I remember when WEMA released those products and we did some adoption studies, over 60% of farmers were already aware because it was relevant to their needs. And over 26% adopted WEMA products quickly. And we expect that to increase. At 26% for a technology, that is exceedingly very high. And then also we look at cost and benefit analysis. We've used hybrid rice. Hybrid rice is a technology that's amenable and very friendly with investors in the private sector because they can invest into it and make a lot of money from it. So there's a lot of money in agriculture if we identify the right technologies. And we saw that if even if you sell your seeds at $7 to $13, farmers will make a lot of money from patronizing such a technology. And then we are using digital tools also to address needs in the seed industry, in the value chain. there's a lot of drag and time wasting in approval, certification, inspection. Digital tools can be used to address that. So in conclusion, we want to say that we need to be called to action. We want to call everybody, the government, all stakeholders, that we need to work together to create frameworks to transform Africa into net exporter of food. And we've already spent over $35 billion on food in Africa. That's a lot of money. So we want to be a net exporter. We want to move more actors to the top of the value chains for rapid agribusiness transformation. We also want to change or move several ongoing concepts to investment operations. All concepts of agribusiness, we want them to go into investment operations now, because from the work we've done, there have been a very good learning curve that can be put into practice to change Africa. We need to modernize our farming using good technologies. And these are technologies that must show profitability, create investment enabling environment that makes adoption of best practices and agribusiness also profitable. And then infrastructure is always very important, especially if we want to deliver technologies, products effectively. And with that, I think I will have to say thank you again for listening. I know I short the time. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for that informative presentation. And we take note of the agribusiness outlook in Africa and the strategies for the agriculture for agribusiness development that you've suggested.
We believe that the future of Africa lies in its vast land. We believe the future is in the hands of those who walk the fields. For those are the hands that feed nations and ensure a better and more productive Africa. We believe in those hands, and that is why we too bring our hands in support of them. Our hands come bearing technologies and solutions that ensure their effort is not in vain, but deliver results that ensure a sustainable, prosperous, and food-secure Africa. At AATF, we are driving transformation of livelihoods in sub-Saharan Africa through innovative agricultural technologies that deliver results. We promise to deliver prosperity through technology.
Just a reminder to our audience, please post your questions on the chat. Now we are going to the panelists, and we will start with Professor Hamadi Boga, the Principal Secretary, State Department of Agriculture Research, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Irrigation. Professor, what strategies and stroke measures is the government of Kenya putting in place to cushion the agriculture sector players during the COVID-19 period? Over to you, Prof.
So you want to share. Thanks. Show the time. Martin, finish.
Thank you very much. Because when the first case was reported in March, and plans were underway to lock down Nairobi and Mumbai, we realized that it is going to affect the economy in a big way. One of the teams to make sure that the country, despite the pandemic, was food secure. So our mandate was to look at, is food available? Is food accessible? Is food affordable? Also, the other mandate was to look at, is production going on? is processing going on? Is marketing going on, both internally and externally? How are the logistics being affected by this? The flow of food to markets and the flow of inputs to farms. So we set up a food security war room that included the government, the county governments, where most of the action is because agriculture is devolved, and the private sector players and civil society organizations that are acting in areas that we tracked on a daily basis to figure out challenges that could impact on the issue of access, availability, and cost. And that way we were able to make sure that although despite the lockdowns and the curfews, that actually we developed protocols for each part of the value chain to enable the actors to continue with business, because we realized we didn't want COVID-19 to turn into a food riot and a food issue. We were tracking the prices, so the prices have remained largely stable. We have made sure markets are largely open. We've had a fantastic season, and right now we have been tracking our food balance sheet digitally. It's doing very well. We can say the country is food secure, and the sector is doing well. The biggest challenge that we saw was for export markets, because the flights stopped, and we had to step in through Kenya Airways to try and support the exporters. It's still very expensive, but there's a stimulus package for that to support them so that they're able to get their produce from the markets. But we are already at 2019 levels for exports. And I think by and large, things are looking very well for the sector. I know the situation is escalating, but because the numbers are increasing, but the modus operandi will not largely change, because now people know that food is an essential service, even to fight COVID, even to stand on the roadblock to check people who are violating anything, must have eaten. So we have been very busy to make sure that the food value chain actors have the protocols and guidelines that enable them to remain active.
To what extent has the government considered technology in the process of this resilience building?
Of course, we have been using technology before and after, and will continue. The vulnerable, so the beneficiaries are, and they access the goods through the private sector channel. So we keep the market system open. So you haven't seen much of government officials moving around in trucks distributing food. And I think this gives dignity as well as efficiency and transparency to the processes. We are also about to launch the e-voucher for input distribution to registered farmers. And some farmers are already benefiting through funding from IFAD, but we have funding also from the government of Kenya to this end. So the input distribution, that is soil testing, seed, fertilizer, agrochemicals, and other post-harvest technologies, will also be handled through the e-voucher, which is digitally. And because of the challenges of, we've been having conversations with the agri-tech companies like and Trigger to see how to close the last mile, so that they take the food from the farm to their warehouses and direct to the consumer, especially in urban areas. But we are thinking there should be models also for rural areas. So by and large, I see like if youth can embrace this agri-tech space, and instead of the vendor on the side of the street, because using digital apps and digital platforms. And we were having a conversation with KFW to see whether we can create such platforms, working with the youth and trying to support youth to innovate in this space. Of course, learning from the big boys like Trigger Foods and Jumia.
Okay, thank you very much for those key insights, Professor Hamadi. Now let's turn over to Justin. Justin, you have been in the seed production business for a long time, and now you are heading the African Seed Trade Association. What new challenges has COVID-19 brought on seeds, and how is AfDB supporting seed companies to respond? Over to you, Justin.
Thank you, Denis, and hi everyone again. The seed sector, the seed industry is not an exception for the impact of this COVID-19. The first one is, as we know, the restriction of movement, including human movement and seed movement and then the agricultural product movement in general. So this, for instance, reduces the availability of the labor, and the cost of seed production has increased as well, because the seed company have to share, not to say compete for this available labor. And as you know as well, all related activities to seed, such as the seed certification, variety release, they are not done in a timely manner because of, again, this restriction of personnel at different stages. I would like to mention, for instance, the fact that this vegetable seed in Africa, most of them are imported. So the operation at the seaport and at the airport has been slowed down as well because of the coronavirus. So imagine if we don't have vegetable seed. We know how important it is for our health. It will be a big problem for us. And I would say also, you know, in general manner, like if the seed companies or the seed operator want to go to the bank to get money, the opening of the bank is not the same. So I would summarize that the impact of seeds, the COVID-19 on the seed sector has been felt like anywhere in the world. But later on, I will talk about what did we do to mitigate it. So first of all, we have communicated more than before, because the communication is the key for us to know the right information and the right action to take. So at national level, we have the National Seed Trade Association, which are the ambassador of AfDB in their respective countries. So we negotiated, we informed them that this seed, as people are afraid of the coronavirus, we say to them that the movement of seed within the country and across borders should not be affected, considering the fact that coronavirus have put survivability on surfaces, and it's highly improbable that coronavirus can survive international transport. And this is especially true for shipment on the seed handled by professional seed company that already respect strict sanitary, phytosanitary, and hygiene handling protocol. So this is at national level, and I'm pleased to report that in general manner, I would say that the NSTA has been successful because according to the report we got from them, seed has been considered as essential services. So that's a good news. We try to communicate faster, as I said. So we created, for instance, a WhatsApp group. We use all the communication tool, the website, newsletter, and so on. So we can be we inform each other on real time what is the impact of this COVID-19 in its country, where we have national seed trade associations. At regional and continental level, we have negotiated, we have talked to the regional economic community, the trading blocks, to say that please do not restrict the movement of seed, and let's do our best to make it even better, because I would say that even no COVID-19, the movement across border movement of seed has been a problem, but now it's time for all of us to make more effort so that it's easier to move seed across border, because no single country can survive alone on seed production. We depend on each other, and if the seed movement is not happening, then we'll have a very difficult time, especially during the time we need right now the preparation for the next season. We really need to make an effort to do it. So we talk also about this with the African Union. We have negotiated, we advise them not to restrict the seed movement. So I would say that in general, everybody is aware of this necessary measure, so that the seed movement is not hindered too much with this. But of course, there will be a negative impact, but the extent to which the impact each country depends on how fast they take this action to mitigate the impact. This is what I can say for now, Denis, so thanks.
Thank you very much, Justin, for that information. I'll come back to you later, but let's first continue and we go to Professor Ruth Oniang'o. Professor Oniang'o, you are a seasoned agriculturist and the head of the Rural Outreach Program Africa, ROPA. You are also active in the empowerment of women and youth. How has COVID-19 affected women and youth in agriculture during this period? Over to you, Ruth.
Thank you, Denis, and thank you for having me on board. And I just want to say jambo and hello to everyone who is participating. I see many friends I haven't seen physically in a long time, and I'm just happy to be a part of this. You know, I've been very excited about this time. Denis, I realized when COVID was first announced in Kenya, and the first thing was for the Kenya government to do like everyone else, you know, close down, stay at home, don't move, don't do anything. And I sent out messages. I said, you know what will kill people? It will be hunger, not even COVID. It will be hunger first. And it will be children and, women and families, the poor, the most vulnerable, who are always vulnerable, who are going to suffer most. And I remember going to a supermarket, everybody was clearing the shelves, you know. But I told myself, but the poor don't have a place to keep their food. You know, they don't have anywhere they can keep grains, even if they bought a whole lot of it. They don't even have the money to buy a whole lot of it. But I'm happy, like Professor Boga said, the government very quickly realized that food must move and people have to eat. And this is a corona that is affecting mostly those who are vulnerable, whose immune systems are low. And so that is very critical. So as a nutritionist, someone who has concentrated on this issue all my life, I'm happy that even people like you can now talk about nutrition. It's not just food, but it's actually quality food, it's diverse diet, it's more vegetables and fruits that tend to be expensive. They have to move. And my satisfaction right now is that I'm seeing many young people get into this sector. They are the ones actually now reaching the farmers where farmers are and moving these foods where they are needed and making sure it happens. That whole value chain is very critical. That value chain is very critical, and that I know that I hope we can come out of this different people. You know, I hear people saying we need to go back to normal. What normal are we going back to? We can't go back to normal. We have to come out better. And I see this as a silver lining for the African continent. We are the agricultural continent. We are the continent that really toils on the soil. And we need to see now how our people who toil on the soil, those women, young people, but also men now, they are realizing that the soil is where Africa's wealth is. And we can also go back to our traditional foods, because those imports, people don't even want those imports anymore, because they are saying, but are they really healthy? So we know that people are protecting themselves using foods, herbs, fruits that they find within the environment, and also spending more time with children. But let me finish there, Dennis. I can tell you that many children all over the world are at home. Many parents are not in Kenya, are not used to having children at home. Children are at school with the teachers, or for the middle income, children are with the ayahs. So for some situations, yes, parents are bonding, but in some situations, children are really in trouble. And when children are at home, they eat a lot more. So it's very costly for the parents. So Professor Boga did not mention about the 1 million kitchen gardens that the Kenya government is promoting to make sure that families have a diverse diet. So I'm happy that finally is quality food. Finally, we can open up markets. Finally, we have to make sure that those who produce actually benefit. And as COVID will show us, we don't put enough resources to the producers of food. You know that, even the donors, when they give us money, that money does not reach where I work mostly with smallholder farmers on the ground. We are now talking about opportunities for young people. Those young people need those resources, and Africa Development Bank, with all them, a lot of money you are talking about, we need to see those resources reach where they are supposed to reach, actually. Yeah. Thank you. Let me leave it there.
Thank you very much, Professor Oniang'o, for those insights. Let's go to Mr. Stephen Mushiri. Mr. Mushiri, as the head of East African Farmers Association, you work closely with the farmers and understand their needs and challenges. What action are you taking to reduce the effect of COVID-19? First, as an organization, the Farmers' Voice. Second, with farmers, and all with stakeholders. Over to you, Mushiri, please.
Yes, thank you, David. Sorry, thank you, Dr. Kyetere. First of all, I want to say that I think this COVID situation has really caused a lot of disruption in as far as production at the farmer level is actually concerned. And some of the things that we're actually doing is that one, we've undertaken a huge consultation with our members just to understand the operations, and if the issues are really varied from late plantings, access to finance. Some of our cooperatives have actually even gone bust in terms of financial distress. And of course, there have been disruptions in the offtake with respect to access to markets in countries where we've had challenges of movement restriction. So some of the things that we are doing is that, or one of the ways we quickly try to mitigate that is that we try to work around, try to coordinate to ensure that plantings were actually achieved. I think at the onset we had done about 60% achievement. But with time, I think with late plantings, we've been able to almost close that gap so far. And I think as late as about a month ago, we were coordinating delivery of top dress. So some of the things we've done is that we have an e-platform. It's called eGranary that has been operating in Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. And we've been linking farmers all the way from input, service delivery in terms of finances, and offtake, supplying through contractual arrangements, and the logistics around that. Of course, that had helped a lot because the idea was to enhance decision making, so that then farmers we're able to interact with other partners along the value chain to be able to deliver, because of bulk procurement, economies of scale, affordable inputs, affordable finance, affordable credit, but also, to reduce the cost of aggregation, and therefore the logistics of lifting that. Of course, also got quite disrupted. So some of the immediate things that we're doing is that part of the consultation, we have provided that information or report to some of our partners, and we are actually in the process of accessing some resources around COVID. We've also been able to review some of our project activities to try and adapt them to the current challenges. Of course, like I said, some of the gaps are quite huge. Some of that financing will be used to close some of those gaps. Some of them include financial distress, hiring of storage facilities, paying of logistics, and so on. We're also trying to create a lot of awareness to our members, so the funds will be used to develop a lot of print material. I think, governments have developed, policies around COVID, but I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to domesticate those, especially to the farmers, to unpack those and make them relevant to, their everyday operations, whether it's at the aggregation center, whether it's in the fields, and so forth. The other thing we're trying to do is some of the monies will be used to procure some PPE material for the farmers. I think at the onset, we had even farmers being arrested for not wearing nose masks and stuff like that. So we are trying to see, how can we help, our offices at the national level and maybe some of the field staff, so that, they're able to go on with the operations undeterred. The other thing we've done is to invest on e-tools. Just last week, we were able to do a board meeting. We were able to do an annual delegates meeting. And we are seeing that we have to use those platforms even to provide oversight in some of the programs, have meetings with field staff, but also in terms of extension. One of the things we are doing on our e-granary is that we try to really expand the platform. Initially, we were providing mainly SMS support, but now we are providing voice messages to our farmers. And what we're getting as feedback from the field is that we're getting a lot of pictorial, you're collecting a lot of pictorial, what do you call them? And as part of extension, pictorial reports, just trying to monitor, how the crop is actually looking like, and so forth. So I think for us, I think that's the immediate stuff that we're actually doing with respect to trying to mitigate, at a short-term basis, the impact of COVID.
Thank you very much, Steve. Yeah, I appreciate for that insight information about your activities. I want to thank very much all the panelists for the insight contribution you have given us. Now we are going to turn to questions from the audience. And the question is, what opportunities are available from AfDB and AATF/CGR on this spirit of public-private partnership to support the private sector in supporting digitization of research and on-farm management during the COVID-19 pandemic? Thank you, Denis.
We've been helping the private sector on a number of things, especially around the seed systems, principally. And we've looked at the possibility of trying to help them around a platform AATF is involved in. I mentioned it, called the Seed Assure platform. We very much like to see how we can strengthen them in terms of the quality of seeds they produce. Oftentimes, the certification process can be a bit cumbersome, and we're trying to see how they can get the certification done quickly, and even things around, even when they use art growers, we want to know what the art growers are doing through seed inspection, and then try to see also how those seeds move around. So through that digital platform, a lot of things can be done quickly, and then to guide them a number of things even across the borders. And of course, also, like I mentioned, we work around policies. So those things are to facilitate a holistic approach towards an improved seed system. So in that respect, digitization is very important, and including normal governance issues, just to ensure that they are not bogged down by too much bureaucracy, and to bring speed to ways things are done. So basically, AATF is involved in that line. And we in AATF right now are trying to see how we can extend digital tools, not just only within the seed systems, but also around markets. We have in-house platforms which we use to guide farmers, like, for example, on mechanization. We're also trying to apply it also in the use of implements on the field. We're trying to also we're also trying to use it to link some of our stakeholders to the markets, a number of things. And in the productivity zone, there are many concerns there on how you can add value to the work you do on the field, in terms of the use of inputs. We've seen inputs, sometimes they are not well maximized on the field, they are wasted. We want to bring in tools that will help farmers to bring variable application of inputs on the field in response to the soil fertility gradients on the field. We also want to see how they manage resources effectively. A lot of things we take for granted, they cost like even water. If you were to do irrigated rice farming, you need water, and water is resource. So all those things are areas we want to go to. So there are huge opportunities, and like I said, they need money, but you need to see where you get value for money. So those are the areas AATF.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel.
I'm back also, African Development Bank. Thank you.
So can you comment on that question which was asked, since it was addressed to AfDB and the AATF? And the question is, what opportunities are available from African Development Bank and the AATF stock CGR in the spirit of public-private partnerships to support the private sector and supporting digitization of research and on-farm management during the COVID-19 pandemic? Over to you, Damien.
I said thank you very, very much. And it is a great pleasure to be part of this webinar. And I thank the organizers and Emmanuel Okobenin, my former colleague, for his responses. From the bank side, a couple of things are at play. We know that the SMEs have not been fully taken on board. And most of the food we eat in our climes, in our communities, in our families, are products from the SMEs. So the bank has realized the important role that SMEs play. And we are trying to develop instruments to network SMEs into our operations. And the surest way to get the PPPs is when you find a solution to reintegrate the SMEs. Whereas the bank is trying to develop the SMEs framework, What we've done now is using the projects we have on ground to find a way to support SMEs so that we can gain traction from what they're doing with the support of some of the operations we have in countries. I know also that inputs is a very, very key factor in addressing the COVID issue. In the past, distribution of inputs is domiciled within government. And we have found out that government cannot do so much in that realm, for which we have invited and indeed involved the seed companies and some private entities that have spread, that we can assure that they will send the quality inputs. Because the challenge also is that most times you expect most of the private entities to help in distributing input in the name of PPP. But the quality of what you get from some of them sometimes will be a far cry from what we expect. They mix grains with seeds and seeds with grains. And then what comes to farmers also becomes a challenge. So that is an aspect of what we're trying to do as well. In terms of processing, we know that a lot of food is being processed, and then it can remain at that local areas of production if value is not added on them. And if we don't have the mechanism to process them to feed the people, malnutrition will become still very perverse within our climes. So we have developed through our nutrition department some family and community food processing methods that we involve women in those training, in those formulation, because quality is also an issue. If you give them those trainings and then you don't infuse quality and safety of those foods that they produce, it can be a challenge in terms of public health problem. So that is also what the bank is doing with respect to involving many more people in what we are doing. Something that is emerging also is the fact that awareness raising with respect to people that get information across board and across various stakeholders is a missing gap, in the hope that our extension systems have crumbled in most of our countries. And without extension and without getting the knowledge base in the hands of those who require them and who need them, that knowledge is lost. So what we are trying, in as much as we are trying to look at the broader situation, is to look at private sector extension delivery systems that have worked and that have reached within countries, to make use of them to reach to as many stakeholders and farmers as possible. Whereas in the long term, we are hoping to bring back the extension systems that have almost gone moribund in most of our countries. I think the bank. Okay, thank you very much. So we have some of these programs we are running, even across borders and countries and regional member countries. We are also trying to find private sector entities whose activities crisscross within a border, within a regional grouping, to involve them in input distribution and the provision of goods and services, so that they can reach areas of need for those services and goods. I think in a nutshell, this is what the bank is doing in area of promoting PPP across board within this context, within some certain situation of COVID we have found ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahendioha, and thanks for that contribution. we can have another question, which is from Dr. Ruth Ngare to Professor Boga. Is there an initiative to register agribusiness practitioners so that in the case of future lockdowns, they can be classified as essential service providers? Over to you, Professor Boga.
I think there's so many initiatives that we are trying to consolidate so that we use it for various purposes in the ministry. We are calling it registering the value chain actors. So this is under the Agriculture Sector Development Support Program, which is funded by CEDA and is operating across the 47 counties. And it is key for gathering information about value chain actors, but also our organizations like the Agricultural Food Authority was collecting registration information to enable especially those who are dealing with food to be treated as essential service providers, to have them with stickers. But all of it was happening. We haven't had time to sit around and make sense of it and see how to apply it in future. But I think more and more we'll be moving into this digital space. We have a consultant working on all these forms of registration, whether of farmers or of other value chain actors, so that we can streamline and make our interactions more efficient and more predictable.
Thank you very much, Professor Boga. We have another question, which is from Monica Ndoria to Stephen Mushiri. Have farmers in East Africa experienced hiccups in accessing certified seeds? Over to you, Stephen.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that has been an ongoing challenge in this region. I know some of the countries in East Africa have even bigger challenges when it comes to access to certified, not just seeds, even fertilizers and pesticides, and it's such a big problem. And with our e-granary platform, that's one of the things we were trying to close. You know, where, for example, because we build an ecosystem of partners, we're able to ensure that whatever seeds farmers are accessing is actually certified, so that then in case there's a challenge in terms of maybe germination or otherwise, then they have a route through which, you know, they can present that grievance, and it's incumbent then upon us to be able to follow that up with the seed producer. And we have done that. I mean, we had challenges, for example, with maize in one region where we had, you know, major problems, and the farmers were actually compensated. I think with respect to COVID, it was a bigger problem because it was compounded by the fact that, you know, even finance became even a bigger challenge. I think because of COVID, now agriculture became even more risky as far as financial institutions are concerned. So that coupled with logistical issues, we had quite a number of farmers not being able to access seed. I know in Uganda, our national farm organization was able to partner through government to help in terms of even seed distribution, fertilizer distribution, and so forth and so on. So it's still a major concern in this region in terms of adulterated inputs. And I think it's good our colleague from the Seed Trade Association is here and government officials are here, but it's still a big problem. And we need to look for concerted ways of dealing with it. And we can only deal with it if we have a value chain approach where everybody is seen to be inclusive with respect to the value chain. We have to work with everybody so that when an issue is raised, then it's circulated to the rest of the value chain actors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Now, colleagues, we are soon coming to an end, but before we leave, may I extend one final minute to each of our panelists today to give a parting shot as we wind down. And I will start with Professor Boga.
Yeah, I think the COVID challenge presents another opportunity also for Africa to learn out of this crisis, to develop its scientific capabilities. Even as we struggle with the agri-technologies, I know the agri-technologies, especially biotech, are not very far removed from synthetic biology, which is needed, for example, to do the diagnostics and other interventions that are needed in the public health sector. I think the challenge before us is to look at the human resources that are available in the continent as far as technologies around this synthetic biology area is concerned, and the equipment and the infrastructure that is available, and see whether we can use this opportunity to grow the capability, scientific capability, to respond to this crisis in all its dimensions. I think we have been very responsive, maybe worried about PPEs, mostly worried about whether we have the test reagents, and we haven't been thinking very much about how to develop the capability to have all those items grow locally. So this problem is not going away. And I think the next big disease will still be viral, just like the one before that, HIV was viral, and the one of Ebola is still viral. And even the plant ones are viral, and the science is the same, the DNA is the same. I think we really need issues with culture and fear them, the more we will be consumers of this technology. And so that is the kind of conversation I would like to push.
Okay, thank you very much for that participation. We have lost you a number of times. Over to Professor Ruth. You are parting short as we wind down.
Thank you, Dennis. I've really enjoyed this, and thank you so much for putting this on. I think that we have to look at silver linings in this. You know, every emergency, every tragedy has a silver lining. And the silver lining is that as Africa, what can we learn from this? What do we have to offer ourselves? How can we trade better with each other, and how can we trade outside? You know, what do we get out of Africa to the rest of the world that is truly African? I think those are opportunities for us, including our own foods, which are very healthy, which we have forgotten. We are going back to them, and that is important. And secondly, and lastly, I think our universities, right now, you know, they are sitting back, waiting to reopen, to go back to the same programs they have had always. You know, it can't be. You know, what is the relevance of university education right now? You know, we have to be manufacturing things. We have to be making things. They have to be of quality. You know, let's share. And I think we need to look at our curricula right now and see whether they are relevant or not. And then, and really, let's see how we can produce healthy foods, vegetables, fruits, even where we sit in the city, even in our own houses, in our own little apartments, we can grow better food. And I believe that by the end of COVID, if it ever ends, we shall be better people. You know, if it ever ends, it may not end, but and then cleanliness, you know, hygiene. By the way, fewer people are visiting hospitals now, and it's showing us most illnesses have been food and water related. So I hope we don't go back to being dirty, you know, and making our foods toxic, but we can be cleaner and more hygienic, because even food needs to be safe and it needs to be good to make us healthy. But thank you, Dennis. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, and everyone. So, kwaheri. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Professor Ruth. Over to you, Dr. Ahindioha. You are parting short. On behalf of AfDB.
Yeah, 3 quick and short pattern shots. Number 1, partnership and collaboration is key in what we are doing in this situation. There is little, nothing we can do at the individual level. Indeed, to note the strength of a broom, if you pick one stick, you can easily break it. But if you take it as a bunch, it's difficult to break it. So coalescing our efforts and having this collaboration and partnership to deliver at the country level is key. Number 2, we need to simplify our procurement processes and use UN agencies, FAO, WFP, that can quickly implement and whose movements within countries, because of their status, can enable them do something quickly on the ground. And lastly, we think that this epidemic is a public health issue, but it is more of a food and nutrition issue. So I think it is left for us to amplify this dimension, that beyond the health issue, you need to live for the next day. And indeed, whatever drug you are given, they will tell you, eat before you take it. So the need for amplification of this pandemic, more as a food and nutrition security problem, more than health problem, because governments tend to spend more and tend to amplify the health issue and less of the food security issue. So this is something we need to put in the public glare as a way forward in resolving this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those 3 parting shots. May I call upon Justin, please?
Okay. Thank you very much, Denis. I would say the coronavirus is here, so let's face it. It has a negative effect on the activity of seed companies and accordingly those of farmers. We would like to reiterate our call upon the seed regulators, government, to continue facilitating the seed movement, and to the seed company, let us please continue our professionalism in handling seeds. So it's time to strengthen our solidarity, to move together so that our agriculture in Africa will still be able to feed our people, and we know how important is agriculture. So thank you all.
Thank you very much, Justin. Over to you, Stephen.
Yes, thank you, Denis. 3 points. One, more than ever, we need to digitize agriculture, and I think has been raised by a number of presenters. We need to look at all actors and see how we can actually digitize, but most importantly, how we can actually converge around the kind of data we'll be collecting and generating. The second thing is, and this lesson from COVID, we need to diversify and we need to store. I think one of the challenges that we've had and that is facing this region is that we have very low storage capacity, very insignificant, and it is not diverse. So we need to look at how we can store and preserve, vegetables, milk, livestock products, and so forth, so that
we have lost you also.
Sorry. So the third thing is that the climate events are now more frequent than ever, and I think when you have climate events that are regular and you have a shock like what you have of COVID, the people who bear the biggest brunt are actually farmers. And I think it's important that we think of probably putting together some agriculture emergency fund. You can imagine with the impact of COVID, and I talked about some of the consultations we did, some of our cooperatives are in dire financial distress, and they actually need some kind of just support to take them back to the normal operations. And This is not going to be done by banks. Banks are not going to offer that support. We really need to think of how we can have such a fund for especially farmers. And I think once they're registered through these platforms, you can actually be able to access them. And the last and final one, which I think has been talked about by Professor Ruth, is the issue of trade. And I think even Justin has talked about it. We have the ACFTA. I think we need to think about how to feed ourselves as a continent, as a region and as a continent. I don't want to belabor on that. I think we all know what the ACFTA is all about. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Okay, over to you, Emmanuel. You are parting short.
Yeah, well, just to say that, just to reiterate that agriculture is a big business, and if you give it what it deserves, it comes out well as a business. And that the destiny of many Africans lie with Africans, including the leadership in Africa. It's very important that the government creates the right environment for the smallholder farmers to transform from subsistence to real commercial agriculture. Your commercial agriculture should not be determined by the size of your land. It's about doing the best things in whatever size of the land you have, and then you will now get a transformative outputs from such lands, which can also give you the incentive to continue to expand. The second thing is that we should not be wary of technologies, because technologies are what is driving agriculture and the business in itself. Because if you use inferior technology, you will not be able to compete in the world market. And as globalization has been created, it's not going to go away anymore. So Africa must be willing to compete in the international markets. And when I mention technology, let's move away from controversies around biotechnology. The world is moving with biotechnology. Biotechnology is a big field. Let Africa key in early enough, otherwise we shall be left behind. And just to say finally that you will not maximize business if you don't add value to what you grow. Many people grow crops and they sell it in the raw state. Now the processor makes more money because he runs away with your raw product. So if you produce your raw product from the farm or produce, add value to it and make more money. So as you move in the value chain, up in the value chain, you make more money. So that's just the message to those who are in agriculture, and just to reaffirm again that whether it's about health, whether it's about livelihood, whether it's about education for your children, agriculture can offer that. And the best way is to embrace technology, embrace innovation platforms, and be well focused. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the webinar. It's my hope that you benefited from the discussion as much as I did. On behalf of AATF and the entire production team, may I extend a very hearty appreciation to all the speakers for gracing our first webinar and sharing with us their findings and opinions today. Thank you very much to you, the audience, for your presence and the consistent engagement throughout the webinar, and we look forward to joining us in the next webinar. As I began in my native tongue, I end in the same Mwebare, to mean thank you all. Over to you, Nancy.
Thank you very much, Denis, and thank you for effectively moderating this first session. We appreciate that. We cannot thank enough our viewers enough for spending just over 90 minutes with us. Thank you very, very much. A lot has been said, a lot has been summarized, so I'll not go into that because we received a lot of good advice, and a great number of stories can come out of just what we listened to. Key from what I heard is that food and agriculture is central to fighting or dealing with any pandemic of any type, and our wealth as Africans is on our soil. So we need to go back and do the best we can there. And the most important that I heard today is there is no normal that we are going back to. We need to come out better than COVID found us. Now, our next webinar will be announced shortly, and most likely it will be on mechanization, and we do hope that we will see you there during that webinar. For now, let me also sign off and say thank you very much, and kwaheri ya kuonana. Thank you.